whatever area of privacy you decide to work in, you're going to need to be able to understand some technical concepts. And I think that this exam provides that value in helping you to understand design. Hello everyone, welcome back to Privacy Professional Training, the channel where we break down privacy certification prep in a way that helps students. Today's video, we're going to be looking at the CDPSE. It is a privacy certification that I have personally taken, and it is offered by ISACA. And a bit of an introduction about myself. My name is Fumi, and I own Privacy Professional Training. And basically, my hope and goal is to assist students that are trying to pass their privacy certifications, of which the CDPSE is one of them. Now, the reason I think that the CDPSE is valuable is because it focuses a lot on engineers. So one of the reasons I personally took it is I'm not a privacy engineer. However, there's a lot of technical concepts that I think that are valuable for understanding for students. And just some background, the CDPSE stands for Certified Data Privacy Solutions Engineer. It's valuable to learn the concepts in the CDPSE exam because whatever area of privacy you decide to work in, you're going to need to be able to understand some technical concepts. And I think that this exam provides that value in helping you to understand design for products, whether it's internal products for your client or products that are being offered by vendors, being able to know the design behind the products, and then being able to monitor privacy solutions across different systems, whether it's a vendor product or an internal product. So in this video, I'm going to cover 5 key concepts you absolutely need to understand before exam day. And so I've done a whole video about my own experience taking the CDPSE, what the requirements are if you're a student, and the types of resources that I've personally used. The CDPSE has 3 different domains, and it's really important for you to take your time and energy, 1, to learn the concepts, and 2, to use good resources to help you prep for the test, because it is a little bit complex. And the CDPSE is relatively newer than other privacy certifications, so also take that into consideration. But here are some key concepts related specifically for this privacy exam. So the first concept that I think everyone should know is privacy by design. So we talked about, engineers. A lot of privacy engineers help with creating that scope associated with a new product or a product that's being updated. It's really important to put in place privacy by design. Now, what this basically means is you're embedding privacy controls into systems, products, and business processes at the beginning, from the very beginning. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at, let's say, for example, you're creating a baby monitor, right? The baby monitor is going to collect audio, which we know is personal data. It's going to collect video footage, which we know is personal data. It may collect things like IP address, which we know is personal data. When those scope documents are being created, privacy by design should exist in order to know how to put in place the appropriate notices, how to put in place controls for parents who are using the baby monitors, just reviewing the entire data lifecycle at the beginning of when the product is being created. And it requires businesses to be proactive and not reactive. Many organizations wait till the last minute to include privacy, but privacy by design says be proactive from the start. And making privacy as a default setting, meaning consumers that own this baby monitor, for example, are going to be able to manage their controls. Maybe they don't want to use the baby monitor anymore. They want all their data deleted. That's what privacy by default is going to put in place. So being transparent about the processing for the baby monitor, if it is in fact that video is going to be collected, that needs to be put in the notice, and giving users control over the personal data that's being collected by your organization. So the reason that privacy by design is important for the CDPSE exam is because engineers are generally going to use very technical language when they're talking about products. I keep using the example of baby monitor because I think it's a really good example to be able to understand what types of questions you might encounter and keep you thinking, particularly if this is your first privacy exam. If this is not your first privacy exam, then you're probably very familiar with this concept already. But if this is your first exam, privacy by design is going to come up in a multitude of scenarios, because what we're really looking for and solving for as privacy professionals is we're trying to make sure that companies are meeting their obligations at the beginning. Don't leave it to the last minute to implement privacy by design, because the consequences that organizations have when they leave privacy at the back end can be very substantial. Okay. Second concept for this exam is the data lifecycle and data flow mapping. Now, this is key in many geographies and is going to be very key for understanding exams. Now, there's going to be a multitude of different sentences that you'll encounter on tests, and the data lifecycle management helps you to understand how personal data is collected, stored, and then subsequently deleted. We know for a fact from privacy that no data should be retained indefinitely. That is key across jurisdictions. But data lifecycle is going to be able to help you understand what obligations might accrue for an organization at each stage. And that's going to be instrumental and influence the types of answers and questions that you encounter on the CDPSE. Now, the lifecycle stages typically look at collection, processing. Now, processing is very broad for personal data, and it is a term that is used to describe any operation or set of operations on personal data. The data lifecycle also looks at transfer, usage, retention, and then subsequent disposal. And you as a student need to be able to understand data flow mapping, which is where you create a visual or documented flow showing where data enters a system. So this is talking about like origination. Did you collect it from a website? Did you collect it from a third party? Have you had it since 1998? That's what we're really looking at, because there are implications on how you process that personal data and then where it's moving to. Are you utilizing a supplier to help you store that information? Are you keeping the data in line with a different regulation? For example, employee data. You know, there are so many different flows associated with the personal data an organization collects, and you're generally going to see questions on the CDPSE that detail the data lifecycle and then also how data mapping should be conducted and what types of factors you need to be considering for specific questions that you encounter. Now, the reason that these two concepts matter, both data lifecycle and then data flow mapping, is because some of the questions are going to describe a system, and then you're going to need to identify what type of visibility should be associated with a particular activity or documentation associated with a specific processing activity. That's really important to be able to identify. And essentially what we do as privacy professionals is we manage processing activities for organizations. Anytime they process personal data, we look at all of the legal implications, and the data flow is going to be really instrumental in being able to give good advisory. And essentially one of the reasons you take the CDPSE exam is because you want to strengthen your privacy knowledge. You want to be able to give good advisory so that your clients can understand what their obligations are. Third concept we're going to be looking at is privacy controls and frameworks. So there are lots of different controls that can be put in place from a privacy perspective, and there's a variety of different controls from a privacy perspective, such as access. That's going to be really important. You're going to need to be able to select, design, and assess different technical controls associated with how personal data is processed and used within an organization. So these controls are going to need to be put in place for a variety of different instances, because it depends, right? There are certain controls that should be put in place for sensitive data. There are going to be controls related to employee data, and having those administrative controls and technical controls is really going to ensure that you meet your obligations under the data protection laws. Some of the common categories for control include access, which I just mentioned. Encryption is another really key one, and then also key management. Some groups and some stakeholders within an organization are going to have more access to information than other groups. So it really just definitely depends. Anonymization is key for privacy. You know, anonymization has a very specific meaning under data protection laws, but it's a control in that if a bad actor ever got access to anonymized data, there wouldn't be any implications under the data protection laws. And I know we're getting very technical here, but I think it's really important for you to know the concepts very clearly, because it's going to help you when you get those fire questions in the CDPSE exam. You're on a timer. So you need to be able to understand these controls, and you need to be able to understand them quickly. So in terms of frameworks, let's look at frameworks. Some of the key frameworks that you might encounter are the NIST privacy framework. That's really key. There's lots of different frameworks offered by third parties that your organization may look into to set a specific standard within the organization. Another really good framework is the ISO 27701. And then ISACA also has privacy guidance. So looking at which framework is best suited for an organization, that could come up in an exam, and you're going to need to know which is best. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for resources for your CDPSE exam, I do have questions that I've made available. I have a link below in the description. If you'd ever like to talk to me personally about my own experience, or you have questions about privacy exams, take a look at the description below, and I'll see you in another video.